with AI, I cut my attorney bill by 90% last year. We're not outsourcing plumbing jobs. We're not outsourcing, machinists.
AI is not coming for your plumbing welding job anytime soon.
Right. Not anytime soon. And if ever, I think as long as there's people that are willing to grab the tools and do the work, it'll always be there.
All right. Welcome back to the Lost Art of the Skilled Trades podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Brown. Super excited. I got Tyler Sasse of Western Welding Academy. What's going on, my man?
Hey, how you doing, Andrew?
It's interesting. I follow you, and it's funny that I haven't run into you until this podcast. And it's super cool to see you and kind of what you're doing out there. I'm really passionate about welding and all the trades and getting the next generation. And let's just get right into it, man. What's going on with Gen Z and getting them into the welding trade? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, so, I think there's so much about Gen Z that, all the generations, but I personally have I would think maybe a little bit more of a unique kind of take on the this generation. I believe that they're incredibly talented, super creative, very hands-on, but I think that they're a product of their parents. See, their parents, and it's a generational thing. And this is just one man's opinion, but when you go back to the parents, they're a product of their parents, right? Which are a product of their parents. And, eventually you go back to the Great Depression and just hardship, and where, there's just not, now we have plenty of everything, right? With the age of the internet and everything. But as humans progress all the way through, they're, if you go back to Great Depression, it wasn't every family didn't have a car, and there wasn't enough resources to go around. Well, as you go to our parents' age, they're the people of the plenty, right? 2 cars, they have vacations,
sure.
and so what happened then is our generation, we were just kind of left, right? Because there was economically, everybody had plenty, so we were just kind of left there. And so there's a lot of trauma. We were the kids oh, you want to go to the store? Walk to the store, right? And so there's now we are the helicopter parents. We're oh yeah, don't do, safe space, bike helmet, knee pad.
I have 2 kids that say, Ethan, don't do that. And I'm my parents didn't do that. Not so much.
Right. They were exploring the world and, going on vacations and checking this out. And, it's the age of the internet. And so I think that these kids nowadays, they're just really suppressed. They're not, they're so all right, get out of here. Let me do the thing. Let me be the hero. Let me fight and earn and prove myself. And so I think that's, important that we give them the space to do that.
Yeah, I just think they have different motivators. Somebody said, I was at the Welding Summit by the American Welding Society. They had a welding summit last month, and somebody threw out, they're not motivated, they're lazy. There's always somebody who says it. I'm like, first of all, let me challenge you on that. They're not lazy. They just have different motivators, right? They want different things. And this is not Gen X, and this is not baby boomers. This is a completely different generation.
Whole new animal.
Want different things. You probably see it in your welding academy. You must see that. Is it mostly Gen Zers who are coming through there?
Yeah. Average age, 19, 20 years old, and from all 50 states. So it's not we're in Wyoming, so least populated state in America. And maybe people from Wyoming are a certain way, but we get people from everywhere. And so we get this really good flavor of kids. And that's what I can tell you after looking at people from all over. It's that they are motivated by different things, but they're super motivated. They're super talented. They're super driven. They just want an opportunity to prove themselves, and I think, it's men and women, but mostly these young boys, they love it. And when we challenge them, they rise to the challenge like you wouldn't believe. Yeah, I really, really, I hear a lot of old people, they're like, oh man, I don't know what we're going to do. These kids they don't want to work. They're not motivated. And almost this fear-based, what is our future going to look like if we have to rely on these people? And we have to rely on them. But I'm so inspired. We're in such good hands. It's just connecting with them.
I agree. And it is finding some sort of bridge to them. Again, it's not the way we did it, it's the way they do it, right? So that is the future generation. This is what it's going to be, in X amount of years. So we need to allow them to flourish, but kind of get out of the way to some degree. And we need to meet them where they are, right? We can't be invisible. We need to be there for them. Otherwise, they get lost.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree. And it's, if we connect with them, we challenge them, we show them the path, but like, let them do it. They're incredible. Some of the most phenomenal people I've had the pleasure of meeting is these kids. Like they're different for sure. But as an employer or as an educator, as a superintendent, or, anybody that's working in any sort of industry that requires people, which they all do, you gotta figure out a way to connect with them.
Yeah. It's not always easy. It really isn't, because they'll say, well, they're always on their cell phone, right? What are they doing on their cell phone? They don't show up early like we used to do. Well, again, it might not be the way we do it, or did it. It's the way it's done sort of today. I want to shift focus to your welding academy and get sort of like a background of like, where did you start from? Was anyone in your family in the welding trade? Did you fall into the welding trade? I want to get the whole background of how you really started.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I was like a frustrated youth. I hate following rules. I hate the status quo. I mean, I just despise standing in line. And so when it came to high school, I didn't make it. I dropped out when I was 16 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And, my dad, which at the time, he was a welder, but like early on, he was a superintendent, he was in management. And so I didn't think of welding as it never even crossed my mind. I took it in high school, and just because, I liked working around the house, building go-karts and stuff like that.
Was it a shop class?
It was just a shop class.
Oh, you took a shop class.
Yeah,
okay, so it actually existed when you went. Okay.
Yes, it did. And
it did.
Yeah. And it was great. I excelled at that, obviously, right? But it was the math and the English and the science and all the more just like, I think following the rules, because I skipped school at one point, and they were like, you can't do that, and I'm like, why? So I didn't make it through high school. I went to work for the civil contractor putting in, subdivisions. This is like right at the peak of the housing boom in like 04, 05 in that area. So, I mean, right before the crash, right? And worked for them. They were great. I was a shop boy, ran parts, and I kept thinking like, I gotta have a career. I gotta have a trade. And I was more of a product of my surroundings. So it wasn't like, I didn't set out to be a tradesman, or, everybody I knew, worked in the trades. They were plumbers, electricians, machinists. And then,
so it was surrounded by you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I wasn't like, like going to college wasn't even like something that was talked about. I mean, not that my family wasn't like anti-college, but if I went, I was going to have to do it my own way. And I mean, I couldn't even make it through high school. Right. So it wasn't, yeah, long story short, when I turned 18, I was legal to work in the field. And so I started looking, like really getting serious about a trade. And I was a laborer at that time, putting in sewer pipe and building roads. And I don't know, I was going to be a lineman. That was when lineman,
really?
Yeah, it was big.
Way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Guess you're not afraid of heights.
Well, I didn't even think about it.
I just think about that.
Yeah, I was just like, oh man, these guys make a lot of money, and they get to travel, and this is, so I was looking into it, but I grew up in Washington State, so if you were going to be a lineman, you had to be a union lineman, and so there was this little requirement: you had to have a high school diploma.
Ooh, okay.
So that was the first time that I was like, oh wow, maybe this high school thing is actually important, right? And so, yeah, being a lineman, that was not a thing. I kind of dabbled, looked into it, and I was my best friend. We were both looking to do it at the same time, except he had a high school diploma. And then my uncle, he called me one day. He was like, "Hey, I'm part of this union, and we need welders really, really bad. They've got this training program." And my first question is like, "Hey, do I got to be a high school? Do I got to have a high school diploma?"
Yeah, sure.
And he's like, "No, they accept GED." I'm like, "Oh," which I had that, so in my mind, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to go be a welder. And I looked up the pay scale and actually was like very close to the lineman thing. And so, but in my mind, I was thinking like a welder is like this greasy, he's got, and in my mind's I had like, the welder's got these overalls on. He's kind of greasy. He's like semi-unskilled. And I just pictured like eating my sandwich, right, for lunch with my welding gloves on. That was like the picture that I had in my mind. That was going to be me. And I thought, oh, well, okay, it's not like super sexy or, it's not like visually appealing, but they make a lot of money. And they work a lot. And so, hey, put me in, So long story short, I get into this training program through some hoops. I had to jump through some hoops. And when I went in there, I thought, like, I'm going to be good at this. I took it in high school. I'm like hands-on. I'm good at most everything that I really put my mind to.
So you made up your mind, like, I'm going to crush it.
Yeah, I'm going to crush it. I was just like,
it.
There's no doubt. I'm going to crush it. Dude, I get in there. I don't have a clue. And within like the first day, I have this first thought, like, I don't know if I can make it here. Like, I don't know if I got what it takes. But I got this thing about quitting. When I really set my mind to something, I would rather die than quit, So.
Well, I want to ask you something there. I want to stop you there because you said something really important about not quitting. And a lot of kids face this as well, where it gets hard and they quit. How did you keep going?
It sounds kind of cliche because I did quit high school.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to be in high school. But when I was in this welding class, I really wanted to be a welder. And I think it comes down to, there's this old saying like burn the boats, like remove any possibility of retreat. And I had kind of did that in my career because I had quit that company I had worked a long time for, and this was my new path. And I think that, the process to learning to weld, just like any other trade, you will go through these phases of I think I'm going to make it. I think I'm going to make it. And then the next day, like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. Right. But it's exhilarating. Right. And when you gain a little ground, you start winning. I love winning. Everybody, I think everybody loves winning.
Game of life.
Yeah, it's a game of life,
Game of life.
Yeah. It turned out I was pretty decent at it at the end, at the end of that class. And I had a fantastic time learning to weld.
So was that a 4-year apprenticeship?
Well, this was a 4-month welding course. And then that got me into this 5-year apprenticeship.
Okay.
But I was able to get 18 months credit. It ended up, I did it in 3.5 years, all in, when time you count that course, like 4 years I was a journeyman, and journeyman wage at that time was like $37 an hour, which it seems like forever ago. Right. I don't know. Journeyman wage now is probably in the 60 or 70. I haven't looked, but I mean, it's way up there, right? Show me anybody that walks into a trade making $60, $70, $80 an hour after 4 or 5 years. Like, yeah, it's good. The trades are good. They're the wave of the future. They really are.
Yeah, it's good money. And it's interesting you said that school maybe wasn't for you. And that could be a lot of people's paths. Like school or college is not for a lot of people. And a lot of people get pushed into a 4-year college degree. And I see a lot, what happens is these kids go to school and then they're 26, 27. They're like, I just went to school for something that I didn't even like going to be in. Like I studied finance or something. I don't want to do this thing, but I know I'm good with my hands. But they sort of got pushed in and now they're in debt. And now they're career changers. I see a lot of that. Do you see career changers come into your academy?
Oh, yes. Hundreds of them. We call them retrainers. There's this whole stigma. Yeah. I mean, like, which if you go back 30 years, the norm was, if you don't go to college, you're not going to have a shot at life. You're going to be, and it was always this mentality of, if college doesn't work out or, whatever, you could always be a plumber. You can always be it was always plan B. And now I get these parents and these grandparents that come up and they're like, hey, so like little Johnny, like he's just not cut out for college. And I try not to talk about this dropping out of high school because I don't want to. In reality, I should just stay. It's a low bar. Just stay in school, finish, So I don't ever want to be seen as like promoting this drop out of high school thing because I don't think that's good. Not just finish, But so often I talk to parents and they're like, yeah, little Johnny, he's just like she's like not doing very good in school. I'm like, what do you think we should do? Like, totally excels at shop class. And so I pull them aside. I'm like, hey, look, like this is who I was. And I tell them my story and they're like, wow. I'm like, yeah, he can shoot for the moon. It's totally up to him if he puts in the work and wants it. And I feel like that's really, if, you know, I mean, even my kids finish high school, you know, it's a low bar, but I think one of the things that I really want to impress upon these kids of this generation is we need you. You are so critical. Our future depends on you, and you can be anything that you want to be. And, you know, with AI, I don't see, I cut my attorney bill by 90% last year.
Crazy, right?
ChatGPT, man.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we're not outsourcing plumbing jobs. We're not outsourcing, you know, machinists. We're not.
AI is not coming for your plumbing welding job anytime soon.
Right. Not anytime soon. And if ever, I mean, I think as long as there's people that are willing to, you know, grab the tools and do the work, it'll always be there.
I want to go back to what you were saying about parents. They came up to you, that you're relatable. Your story is relatable in sense that you didn't go to high school, but it's, you know, you weren't cut out for that. But it's relatable to somebody who now you can show them, I've gone this path, I'm successful. And they look at you and they say, wow, it's possible, you know, to not go the college route, you know, and look what you have achieved, which is a good thing. You know, you have that story that you can make an impact on a couple, you know, a bunch of these kids' lives. So there are parents that are coming through where these kids are just not cut out for school. Do you find, and interesting enough, I do find that some people in the trades have ADHD, like they just can't concentrate in school. And I remember speaking to Jamie McMillan, who is is an iron worker up in Canada. And her big thing was like, I couldn't concentrate in school. Like I had ADHD, but I excelled in ironworking on the tools.
Yes.
Are you seeing that?
I got ADHD.
Oh, you got ADHD.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so when somebody's trying to, and I'm a real hands-on, like visual learner. So that was one of the problems that I had during school. And my parents weren't overly concerned. Like they were just like, because I kept asking them, hey, I really want to drop out. I really ain't, you know, I don't like this school. And they're like, of course, their standard answer is like, no, you got to stay there. You got to finish. And finally one day my dad comes home and he's like, hey, so I seen your car at work today at 7 o'clock in the morning. Why were you there? I said, I dropped out of high school. Yeah, right. I just quit asking. So yeah, I think ADHD, ADD, I mean, you know, it's a superhuman, you know, I don't know, maybe call it a skill or an asset. It's people that are just really creative and they want to do things with their hands and they're very visual learners. And turns out, I mean, I've got the receipts. I'm pretty doggone successful. I don't want to, you know, make me sound more than I am, but that's my story and I've made it, you know, and I've had, you know, quite a few different companies and I'm still the CEO at Western Welding Academy. And I've got a nonprofit, Blue Grit, you know, that we support. We run our blue collar tour out of that. And, you know, we tell that story to people all across America, young kids especially. And I would say from a, you know, success standpoint, I mean, I don't know, I'm there.
Yeah. And that's something that you can be proud of. And that's something that, you know, you can, again, going back to kids and seeing what's possible out there. Because I always like to show them what's possible working with their hands, that, you know, somebody, you know, put the time and effort, but you found your love, you found what you're good at. I want to shift over from when you made a leap from, I guess, employee to business owner, because that's very difficult for someone who's been in the field and you have the technical skills, but to have the business skills, it's a whole different mindset. How did you flip the switch? And did you have any mentors that helped you along the way?
Yeah. Trial by fire, you know.
Yeah.
My first year, of course, this was before the massive inflation we've seen after, you know, the last 4 or 5 years. But my first year as a welder, I made $72,000, right? So I'm 18 or 19 at the time.
Wow.
I mean,
okay.
I feel like, this was in 2006, 2007. So, you know, great money. And then my next year I was, I don't know, over 100. And as I worked all the way through my career, I got to work in, all across the country. I worked in Alaska on the North Slope, up in the Arctic Circle, all, the West Coast, the South, the East Coast. I mean, I had this phenomenal career. And then I started pipeline welding, which is kind of like the highest, it's by far like the highest skill level and pay scale for pipe welders. And, 250, 300,000 a year, no problem. I mean,
But you're traveling.
Yes,
You're
yeah,
traveling.
which is a little bit difficult for the family. And I'm married. I've got a wife and 3 kids, and so not eventually people just get burned out. Your kids, your wife, and so I think as a welder, I had this really good career, but eventually I got tired of it, and so I moved to Gillette, Wyoming. But having grown up and spent all that time on the West Coast where it's just super competitive, which most everything's union there. So you think about like competing on the West Coast, like all these contractors hiring from the same labor unions. They're buying all their material from the same places. So how do you get a job? You got to be really competitive, and it's tight margins, 2-3%. And so moving to Wyoming, it was like stepping back, several decades in Stone Age. We did things as a welder, like we were doing things that I had heard of, but I had never seen it, and because it was just so ancient technology. And I remember asking my boss at the time when I moved there and was working there, I'm like, why do we do it like this? And I was like insinuating that this way of doing things is broken. And he was just like, oh, well, I mean, that's the way we've always done it. And I remember like the straw that broke the camel's back. This is when I first started my first business. They handed me a print, and they're like, "Hey, can you build this?" And it was just some pipe fabrication, some spools, and I'm like, "Yeah, I can build that," And they're like, "Are you sure?" And they kind of looked at me. I'm like, "Yeah, I can build that." I thought it was a trick question, like what's the I'm looking at the print, and so finally, you guys like, okay, build it, And I said, "Where's all the material?" And he's like, "Oh, it's out there in the snowbank." And I remember thinking, like, this guy's going to pay me like $100 an hour to dig material from the snowbank. We would have never done that on the West Coast. Never.
Very different.
Yes, very
different.
And so I'm like, they must be just wildly profitable. And so that was when I had this thought. I'm like, if I can take my West Coast mentality, I can bring it to the Midwest. I bet, we could just dominate. And we did. And so it was shortly after I started a welding and fabrication company, which was wildly successful. And I sold that in 2015. But there were so many things that I didn't know about being a business owner. Like I didn't understand accounting, or I didn't, I don't have a college degree. I just know the work. Like I know how to get the work. I know how to get the work done, the hiring, the firing, the collecting the money. But there was all kinds of, EBITDA. I didn't a clue what EBITDA was, for your business listeners, they know what EBITDA is. But it was, there were so many, in that first, I would say that first company was such a good learning experience for me. It taught me all the things what not to do. But I was relatively young. I think I was like 27 at the time, 28. So I had time to mess it up and do it again. But I sold that in 2015. I started inspecting and running work. I was a welder foreman and a superintendent, just kind of bouncing around. And then in 2019, right before coronavirus, I founded Western Welding Academy. And that was like, this is it. I'm going all in on this. This is my opportunity to really make a big impact for these kids. I want to have this massive impact all across the nation. And
were you sure at that point, because coming off a business and selling your business, and now you're starting a new venture, were you concerned at all? Were you like, this is it? Like, I know, or did you have any hesitation at that point? Because I'm curious.
Yeah, so with the advancements in technology, like this was before I even knew anything AI, but I could just see the way things were going, and I'm like, and for a lot of people that don't understand this, and maybe some of your viewers or listeners don't know this, but there's such a massive problem all across the world. So I knew about technology was advancing, that the trades were that was the place, and the people that were going to really make it in this next level. So that there's a globally, the global supply chain is crumbling. So all these countries all across the world, the age of their people is getting so old. It's this massive problem that people are talking about all over the place. But like go to YouTube and type in demographic collapse. It'll blow your mind. Japan loses their ability to maintain their infrastructure, right? Infrastructure, that's hospitals, police, fire, drinking water, sewer systems that work. They lose their infrastructure in 15 years. They just don't have the people to maintain those systems. In the next 20 years, China loses 50% of the workforce. Think of all the things that we get from China. Like, we don't even think about it. Everything, right?
So everybody's aging out, you're saying?
Yes, they're aging out.
Yeah.
And so I kind of knew of that, and I could see this whole like technology thing happening, and I'm like, well, the kings of this next wave or next new world, if you want to call it, like the new, as all these demographic collapse, as that's all happening, it's the people that put a force of tradesmen into the field. I'm like that. Those are the people that are going to be really successful. So how do I take what I know and really leverage that? And what little bit I know about business, how do I take that? Because I'm a really hard worker. How do I take that and apply that? And that's why I'm so passionate about it. And it's the people that, if you're a contractor, you're putting people into the field, putting men and women, or if you're training them. Or like what you're doing, you're talking about it, you're telling the story, you're sharing that those are the people that are going to be massively successful, And I get approached from private equity groups all the time. And, they're like, oh, we're so passionate. Like, all the investment dollars are going towards that because they know. All these money guys, they know.
Well, all the private equity is buying up, HVAC and plumbing. And that's, people who are baby boomers who are in their mid 60s or going into their 70s. It's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And they get a buyout. I don't know where it's going to be with private equity running everything. We'll see how that shakes out. But I'm not surprised that they would approach you in what you're doing. But I can imagine one side of it's profitable and it's fun, but it's also fulfilling because you're changing people's lives. And I've seen the videos, and I've seen, how you approach the training side of it. And it's just inspiring in what you're doing. So you're almost doing, I don't want to say God's work, but like, and that's kind of cheesy, but you're doing something and you're giving back. You're giving back.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. We're at the top, we're at the top of our game. We're at the tip of the spear in this space, if you will. And, we have worked really, really hard to find ways to connect with the kids and this next generation and really connect with them and say things in a way that's meaningful and inspiring to them. And I feel like we've done a really good job with that. Social media, we set a goal last year we wanted to reach 1 billion people, and we missed it just by, I don't know, a few million, which when you think about a few million, it sounds like a lot, but dude, that's 1,000 million, right? 1 billion is. And so, we have a big voice and we've reached a lot of kids. And I think one of the things being a welder, you focus as a welder to be successful and be a good welder. You have to focus on production and quality, but quality, you cannot sacrifice quality. Otherwise you won't be a successful welder for very long. And so we built our entire program around that. And what we found, the very first thing that we found was that we had to really focus on teaching work ethic, accountability, and integrity. This is no way of me saying that we don't focus on teaching welding skills, because we 100% do. But work ethic, accountability, integrity, that's what these employers, and that's what it takes to be a jam up hand out in the field.
So it's soft skills on top of the tech skills.
Yes. And so we structured in and we could have bought a curriculum, but when we realized that, we're like, oh, there's no curriculum out there that you can buy off the shelf, plug and play. It's not going to work. It's not going to do what we need it to do. And it was painful. It took a long time. There was a lot of iterations. We went back and forth, lots and lots of, debates. And, that's how you get the best solution. But But in the end, we designed our own curriculum. We built our own system, and our students make 32% more money on day one than any other welding school in the nation. So like it works, right? We have really focused on that quality and second to none. And every year we're crushing them. Our student, because I think as an education institution, and that's what's so wrong with, the educators nowadays is that, and I don't know about nowadays, maybe they've always been this way, but they don't focus on the outcome. We are, as a welder, I'm super focused on the outcome, because when I make that weld, when the x-ray truck gets there and x-ray it, it better be good, right? I can't sacrifice that quality. And so we solely base our success based on what our students make when they come out. And so we're constantly tracking that. And if we start slipping, well, hey, what's going on? We better take a look. Have market conditions changed? So you just got to be in tune with it and never give up and never take your eye off the ball, right?
How long are these programs? So if somebody starts tomorrow, how long is that program, and when do they start working? So the audience understands, like, yeah.
So our longest program is a 6-month course.
6 months, okay.
Yeah. So we have some shorter ones because of that retrainer aspect, like you were talking. We get so many students from other welding schools, or maybe they're already a welder and they want to upskill a little bit, or so we do have some shorter programs. But we have a 6-month course that's solely designed for somebody that has no experience. So they come in and we take them from, they know nothing. And that's one of the common questions we get, like, well, I don't know anything. I didn't take it in high school, or my high school didn't have shop class, or it's okay. We designed this thing for the person that knows nothing. And it's 6 months. You can be welding at a journeyman level, really, really high level.
6 months.
Yeah.
And that's it. What's the investment in for somebody to go through the academy? Yeah.
So 92%, this number fluctuates a little bit, but 92% come from out of state. So, everybody that comes needs housing. So including housing, it's just a shade over 35,000. So, if you think about that, I'm going to invest, it's $35,800. I'm going to invest $35,800. I'm going to spend 6 months grinding, and it's a grind. We run this place. We're not soft. If you
sure, you weed out the people that,
Yeah, we run it just like a job site. Absolutely. Yeah. It's not a 4-hour soft little, it's 8 hours a day. We run it kind of like a boot camp. I mean, it's pretty savage. But yeah, 6 months, you can walk out of there making, 70, 80, 90. We have graduates making over $200,000 a year. Like, just, crazy. And they're working a lot of hours. Don't get me wrong. These are not, you're not going to make $200,000 a year working 40 hours a week.
Right. It's a 9 to 5.
Right. It's not a 9 to 5. Yeah. So, but yeah, they're making killer money, and they're building things. Like, they're so impactful, so needed to America, because you look at any industry, it's we all need drinking water, and we all need to turn the lights on. Electricians are so needed, but everything is made possible because a welder held two things together, right? Two pieces of metal. And so the welder is like kind of the kingpin, we say, to all the other trades and all the industries. So it's super important.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I'm speaking tomorrow at a session, and I'm, how to inspire and, retain the younger generation, or get Gen Z. And one of the things I do say is, what would happen if we woke up tomorrow and all the welders disappeared? I mean, envision, what a life is like without welders, or any trades person, but like a welder. But it's interesting. So you going back to what you were saying about the investment in. So it's 35 investment in, it's 6 months. And you come out and you could be making $70,000, $80,000. How do you, I'm really interested in this, how do you push back on kids who say there's no money in welding? Because you have a lot of kids on TikTok, you have YouTube, and you don't really know who it is exactly, but there's a lot of kids say that there's no money in welding. How do you push back? Because even weldingworkforcedata.com, which is a part of the American Welding Society, it says the median wage is about $26.79, the median wage, or about $52, $53. So how did they make more money coming out of your organization? And what do you say to those kids who are saying, there's no money?
I don't think you can really say anything, right? It's, you got to show them. And so we put this whole book together. We call it our results book. I have this saying that results, because nothing else matters, nothing, right? So we put this whole book together. It's our results book, and it's literally just the pay stubs of graduates. So when you look at that book and you see these guys making $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a week, I'm like, man, what do you classify money? I think you're gonna make $3,000 a week. I think that's good money, for an 18, 19-year-old kid. And so that's how I respond to that. Because yeah, you're right. There's always some Debbie Downer in the comment section, and what I found when you really look into it, it's a welder who's working at this little fabrication shop, that really low skill, stamping out a part that, a robot's probably going to take that job because it's more of an assembly line type. And there's not a lot of money in those jobs, but robots should be taking them jobs in reality, and that's kind of leads me into the second thing is a lot of people think like, well, and we're here at FabTech, Andrew. And if you look around, there's robots everywhere. But for the weld that's being the same weld over and over, it's the same one, assembly line type of work. Well, yeah, a robot should do that.
Cobalt welding of something like.
Yeah, who would want to sit there on an assembly line and make the same 2-inch stitch weld?
Yeah, it's monotonous.
Yeah, nobody. Yeah. As ADD, somebody with ADD.
Yeah, forget it.
Forget it.
Forget it.
Yeah.
So what is, if you were to talk to the audience and say, this is where the money is. I know you kind of sprinkled it a little bit on a couple areas, but where would you concentrate your time to make the most bang for the buck?
High pressure pipe.
High pressure
pipe. So and for the audience that doesn't understand, you think about, I just talked about like making a 2-inch stitch weld. That's a flat little weld on, I don't know, some part that's going through the assembly line. Well, in welding, anytime you're welding in a straight line, a robot can weld in a straight line, whether it's horizontal, vertical. But when you weld pipe, you got to weld overhead when you're on the bottom, right? And you come around, now you got to weld vertical up the side, and you got to weld flat when you come across the top. And so it doesn't matter if you're going uphill, downhill, it's all the same. And because when you weld pipe, you have to weld in all positions, and that requires the most amount of skill. And so skill equals dollars. The more skill you got, the more dollars you're going to make. And so for the audience, I would say high pressure pipe, which, people think when they think of that, they're like, oh, pipelines, natural gas or oil pipelines. Well, what if oil price or about, no, high pressure pipe includes everything from a dairy, right? We're going to take the milk from the cow. That's all goes into pipe, stainless steel pipe, power generation, every single coal-fired, nuclear, diesel fire. It doesn't matter the fuel for the nuclear powerhouse or the powerhouse. All of that is made possible because of pipe and pipe welders and high pressure pipe, semiconductors, all the computer chips, that's a massive industry. TSMC has been migrating out of Taiwan, bringing all their assets to America. There's like trillions of dollars being invested in all over the United States because of the workforce issue that's happened in Taiwan. But all there's so much pipe that gets welded there. You think about Intel, which is a great American company. I mean, all these plants, it's all pipe, and there's structural steel and there's other things in there, but pipe welders are, and the average age of a pipe welder. So people don't generally go into this trade, for 40 years. Like it's a hot, sweaty job. And
it's not easy.
It's not easy.
It's not easy.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what I tell them kids, like, don't kid yourself. This is not an easy job. That's why we make so much money, because it takes a lot of skill, a lot of talent, and it's hard. But the average welder is in that industry about 10 to 12 years. So there's always a shortage of welders. And if you're skilled, you can make the big money.
So if you're skilled and you work some overtime, so you're making way into the 6 figures, would you say?
Oh, yeah. 100,000+ a year, easy.
100,000. Do you think that you hit a ceiling at some point in the field?
As a welder, yeah. So, and that's where like the skill set, you start out working like maybe commercial hospitals, like the chilled water piping. You walk into a hospital and it's cold or warm in there. You don't realize that is a product of a pipe welder that put all that pipe in to make that possible. A lot of people don't know that. But, that's, I would say, like a entry-level pipe welder is working in a plant like that. As you work your way up, by far, nuclear powerhouses and pipeline welding, cross-country pipeline welding, that's where the highest wage you're going to command at that level. And so, and that's when I got there, I'm like, well, what can I be after this? Like there is no, like, there's no up from here. I'm at the top. What am I going to do? And, like at that point, I wanted more. And that's when I got into supervision. I started running work. I eventually went on my own, branched out, went on my own, started that very first company. So, as a pipeline welder, I'm making well above 250 a year, 300,000 a year. Like, but that's welding, 610s, 710s. I mean, you're putting in some overtime. I would work about 8, 9, 10 months a year. I'd take 2, 3, 4 months off sometimes.
Okay.
And I mean, if you make 300,000 a year, you can take 4 months off. Feels great. Like, don't spend all your money, save it.
Right, of course.
Yeah. So
yeah. Well, that's another aspect of that you just touched upon. I don't know if you talk to your students, it's one thing to make X amount of dollars, but you got to keep a certain amount. We talked about accountability and the soft skills. I'm just shifting back only because you just touched upon it. Do you teach them the financial side of it? Does that come up?
yes.
It
yes.
does. Okay, good.
Yeah. So I developed this system, and I won't bore you with a bunch of details, but we call it the 3-bank system. And it's a way to, because I think one of the things that these young people, in the age of social media, it's not like you don't have just a ton of discipline, right? Like, it's this instant gratification. These kids have learned this behavior of, like, if I want something, just go get it. It's that I can get the dopamine very quickly. I love psychology and how our brains work and whatnot. But so I think it's important to build systems that don't require just this huge amount of discipline. Build a system that doesn't require discipline. And that's where this 3-bank, you calculate your bills, and then you calculate your spending money. And so we teach this whole thing called the 3-bank system, and it works. I mean, I'll get these calls from these kids, 3, 4, 5 months later after they graduate, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? They're like, I got 60 grand in my bank. I'm like, dude, that's sweet. That just fires me up. Yeah.
That's awesome. You don't teach that in school.
They don't.
They don't. No, they really don't teach that in school. There's no real course on that.
No. Right.
No. But I'm glad that you teach that it's one thing to make X amount of dollars. You got to keep a certain amount. So I'm glad that you kind of build that into your whole platform.
Yeah. Yeah. So important.
Yeah. So you've taken this on the road, basically. So where do you go? Is the blue collar tour? Where do you show up, and what's it like at these events?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, 2020, we started the company in 2019. 2020, I kept seeing these headlines, right? Coronavirus is happening, last part of 2020, and then 2021 rolls around, and I kept seeing these headlines because they shut the schools down, and the suicide rates were just off the charts, and I'm thinking, like, dude, like, these kids are killing themselves. We gotta, like, somehow we have to contribute. We gotta stop that. I can't change the shelter in place, coronavirus policy or laws or rules. I don't know. Some of it was law, some of it wasn't. I can't change that for, Nebraska or California or Texas and so our team was talking about, like, somehow we got to connect with these kids and because the only interaction they were getting was through, everybody had to wear a mask, and nobody was showing up really doing events at that time, and everything was digital. This whole work from home thing was taking place. And so one day I'm like, you know what? We're going to get in the welding truck, and we're just going to drive there, and we're just going to show up, and we're going to weld pipe with them. Well, we're going to weld whatever, and we're going to make this event. And so my team was like, dude, you're nuts. That is not going to work. And well, turns out it worked pretty good. Right?
Yeah, see?
Yeah. So now it's nationwide. We go coast to coast. We put on about 30 events a year. And, it's through it's a submission process where the students have to submit a request, the teachers have to submit a request, and then we evaluate all the requests where, and we already know, like, we're going to go coast to coast. And so we base it all off on that. And then whoever wins an event, then the schools from that whole area all collect. And we it's an all-day event. It's phenomenal. The kids love it. Like, if you look at Blue Collar Tour on YouTube, you can find some some of our recap videos is pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some of the videos, and it's just, like I said, it's inspiring to see that. And you're making a difference and making an impact. And it just, I'm sure it goes back to your roots, just of who you are and how you came up. But the success side of it, did you ever think that you would get here? Did you ever think in your wildest dreams that you'd be at this point in your life?
Yeah. Somebody asked me that the other, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. And what I can tell you is, there were some things like the Blue Collar Tour that was just kind of spontaneous. But yeah, when I laid it out, I built this roadmap. This is what we were going to build. We've taken a couple little detours, but we've built pretty much almost identical to what my original kind of thought and vision was. What I didn't understand or didn't think about is like all the problems that come with it. There's so many. There's a whole other aspect, and when things come up, I'm like, oh, I never thought that was going to be an issue, right? Well, we got to hire somebody for that, or we got to bring an expert, or bring a consultant in, or. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, I want to have a big impact. I want to really inspire kids. I want to talk to them. I want to explain how the world works in a way that's not being done in traditional high school or college. I want them to have every opportunity for freedom, for true freedom, which only can happen if you're financially successful. That's the truth. And so I don't know. That's just really important to me. I want to give them every opportunity they can have.
Like I said, it's a good feeling. It's a fulfilling feeling to give back, especially as someone who doesn't have a lot, that you give them a path, right? You show them how to succeed. And then after a handful of years, you check up on them like, wow, they really are following what, I had told them to do. And there's a path there. But that's all because of, kind of what you put together in your own academy, people that come through it, right? You put the processes together and you're showing them how to basically show up and do the work. Because that the work ethic, you want to get anywhere in life, you got to put the time, effort behind it. Without work ethic, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah. You can be anything you want to be if you're willing to, set a goal, and as long as you're willing to put the work in, like I feel like I'm living proof of that. This is what I wanted to do. This is what I wanted. Just go after it. Don't take no for an answer, and don't give up. Just keep chipping away. I mean, it always works out.
Yeah. It's not instant gratification here. There's delayed gratification. Might take a few years. Tyler, this has been an excellent, excellent conversation. Where do people find your academy? Where do they find the Blue Collar Tour? They want to find out more information.
Yeah. westernweldingacademy.com or applytoweld.com. We're on all social media platforms. I mean, at Western Welding Academy. There's always a link in the bio. There should be like a little page or link tree or something but it's on our website. And yeah, if people want to check it out, we're happy to, we always need more people spreading the word and talking about what's happening and across the nation with the aging demographics, and the trades are where it's at.
Yeah. And keep inspiring, man. That's what it's all about. I'll put all the information in the show notes. Everybody can get to the links. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm super excited to be here at Fab Tech all week, and have a blast at the show, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate it. Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, man.